Alright, welcome everyone to another EDH Deck Tech. I know it's been a very long time, but you know, I've been busy. Finished school, job hunting, been doing some research with the Wii for school, so that was a lot of fun. Went to Waterloo, um, and yeah, now I'm back. I'm done teaching, I'm done everything. So I'm working on some decks. This is a Sultai deck. Our commanders are Thrasios. Thrasios is a green and a blue. For 4 mana, we can scry 1. And then reveal the top card of our library. If it's a land card, we put it onto the field. Otherwise, we draw the card. And Silas Renn. Silas Renn's a 2/2 Death Touch. Whenever he hits a player, you get to pick an artifact in your yard. And for the rest of the turn, we have the option of casting that artifact from our yard. So these two guys I've chosen. I took apart Silas Renn and Timna the Weaver, and I turned it into a Sultai deck. I really just like high value decks that have a low mana curve, and I wanted to come back to Sultai because it's something I played in the past. I had a really live in the meme dream Mimeoplasm Relentless Rats deck that really, you know, cycled through its yard in 2 turns, or cycled through the library in 2 turns, put it into the yard, brought back all the Relentless Rats with a Bloodbound March or whatever. It was a lot of fun, but it was very limited in its playstyle. So I've done something that's really complicated and diverse, and so I'm not even sure of the full potential of this deck yet. I've been playing around with it for about a week and a half. There's a lot of intricate combos. It's really a mid-range deck. It's made mostly for multiplayer games for sure. You're not going to be super competitive with this. It's just a lot of cards that I really, really love. So before we get into it, I just want to make a few quick notes on cards that are missing or need to be subbed out at some point if you want to go for this build. So we have Azusa, Lost But Seeking, needs to be in the deck. We have a Path of Ancestry that's in my Mathis deck currently. In this deck, Yavimaya Coast will be replaced by another Path of Ancestry once I get that. And eventually one day there's a Burgeoning in the deck, and I will replace it with a Explore. And the reason we want these Azusa Explorer type effects is because we're just playing as many lands as we can per turn for landfall abilities. There is a cycling sub-theme, there is a desert sub-theme, and there is quite a few landfall win conditions. So it's a very fun deck, very cool deck. Let's get into it. So I've organized it differently. Mostly I've organized it based on the combo parts instead of the mana curve like I usually do. So into the creatures, one of our win cons, of course, is Avenger of Zendikar. Titania is in here. There's a lot of cards that work with Titania. We're running a Zurin Orb. We get to run a lot of really fun cards, artifact cards that work with our deck that we can bring back with Silas Renn. So there's also a Fluctuator for our cycling package as well, which is a lot of fun. But Titania and Zurin Orb is kind of the classic. Essentially at the end of their turn we can sack all their lands if we don't think they are going to be able to respond, and then get a bunch of 5/3s, come in and take them out. Hedron Crab's actually a win condition. Normally we're milling ourselves, but the big combo pieces in this deck are World Shaper and Splendid Reclamation. We fill our yard really big if we have Hedron Crab or an Ob Nixilis in play, and we get about 17 lands in, and we've done a bit of mill work on them beforehand, something like that, you know. These are big triggers and do a lot of work. There's Ob Nixilis, the second more reliable win condition. When we bring back all our lands from our graveyard to play, yeah, we drain him for 3 for every single land that hits, and he gets 3 1/1 counters. So pretty darn good. There's a Thassa in the deck too, in case we want to just go in with him. Remunap Excavator, amazing in the deck. Oh, I am missing a Crucible of Worlds as well. I'm waiting for the reprint. It's like $80 right now, and then the reprint will put it down to Probably about 25 is what people are speculating, so I'll finish up my trade-ins once that comes out, and we'll get one of those as well, because again, works with Silas Renn. We have a form of recursion on it, which is great. But Remnap's good for now. I can recur my creatures from the yard, so it's a safe bet that he'll come back if I need him. And when we're milling ourselves, it's a second sort of mini library. Our graveyard turns into that for getting out lands. Then we have a Sylvan Safekeeper. This lets us sacrifice a land to give a creature Shroud until end of turn. This is really good. We have a Gitrog monster in here, so really we're sacking, we're drawing, we're protecting our creatures, we're filling up our yard with lands for the big play late game. It's quite strong. And I'm actually going to go back here. I need to mention with the Ramunap Excavator, we have a Glacial Chasm in the deck. And I'm going to get into how we sequence combat with cards like this. So what we can do with Glacial Chasm, essentially what it reads is when Glacial Chasm comes into play, we sacrifice a land, and we can't attack, but all damage that would be dealt to us is reduced to 0. So with a Ramunap Excavator and a sacrifice outlet, we can sacrifice the land at the beginning of our upkeep. Normally the card Glacial Chasm has a cumulative upkeep of pay 2 life, so you lose some life and it starts to hurt you the longer it stays in play, right? But at the beginning of our upkeep, we could use something like this, give a creature Shroud, go to our combat phase, attack, and then at the end of turn, play our land for turn, which will be the Glacial Chasm with the Ramunap Excavator, resetting the cumulative upkeep, and our opponent can't attack us in return. So essentially we have this fog that keeps recurring, and is incredibly strong, and it's one of the best combat tricks in the deck for kind of locking people out of attacking, or well, not attacking. They'll still get all the triggers and everything, but we just won't take damage from anything. The Gitrog monster, one of the best cards in the deck, hands down, lets us play an additional land, 5 for a 6/6 Death Touch, nothing to scoff at. And whenever a land is put into our yard from anywhere, so when we mill ourselves as well, which a lot of this deck does, we get to draw a card. And sacrificing a land at the beginning of our upkeep, it's not really a big deal. We've got a Lotus Cobra, so again, playing multiple lands per turn, or bringing all our lands back from our graveyard. With a Lotus Cobra in play, it's kind of like they come into play untapped, because we net all the mana that from the landfall trigger anyways, so that's really good. There is also an Amulet of Vigor, just to make the deck absolutely disgusting when it needs to be. World Shaper, new card, shout out to Phil, showed me this card, really good for the deck. We do have a high market in our land base specifically for this. Not a lot of other sack outlets. I think it's an Altar of Dementia and that's it. So essentially when he attacks, we mill the top 3 cards of our library, and when he dies, we put all land cards from our graveyard onto the battlefield tapped. So really, really good for the deck, and yeah, splendid reclamation on a body pretty much. So now we're going to get into the Grave Rave package. This is how we fill up our yard. So Golgari Thug, really good card. When he dies, we get to put a creature from our graveyard on top of our library. And with Thrasios, if we have something like Training Grounds in play, or just a ton of mana late game, it's pretty easy to just draw the card and be able to play it depending on what it is. So that's a nice one. It's got Dredge 4, and we definitely want to be dredging. This is always something you want to discard when you're trying to filter with a frantic search or something. Stinkweed, same vein, more dredge, flyer, and essentially has Death Touch, so dissuades your opponent, and when he finally hits the yard, you can dredge him for 5 and fill up. Though both those guys work really well with the Fauna Shaman, lets us discard a creature card for a green and search our library for a creature, reveal it, and put it into our hand. We have to tap the Shaman, obviously, or else it would be overpowered and busted, but still, really good card. This is how we get Titania, Obnixilis, our Gitrog monster. Those are kind of the top 3 finishing cards in our creature base. Nyx Weaver, we lose 2 cards from the top of our library into our yard every upkeep. It's 3 for a 2/3 reach, and for its mana cost, you can also exile it and return a card from your graveyard to your hand. So really strong, get us back anything we milled that was actually crucial to a strategy we're trying to build up with what's in our hand. Glissa, one of the best blockers in the game. First strike, death touch, 3 for a 3/3. I mean, that in itself is really good in my opinion. The ability is just a nice cherry on top. I wrote it down here. How many? We got 11 artifacts in the deck, and a lot of them we do want to bring back, and a couple of them actually we have like an Executioner's Capsule. So we have some of the classic Glissa cards in here, and being able to recur them that much easier is nice, but her as a blocker is great in and of itself. We usually get, you know, maybe one recursion out of her. Sidisi, I made Sidisi a long time ago. That was actually my last try delving into Sultai, and it was pretty cool, but it was still, again, very combo heavy, sort of Hermit Druid half your deck, make a bunch of zombies with haste and flying with a wonder, and just go in. So again, I wanted this power. I've really put a lot of work into making the power level of this deck quite strong, but not overwhelming. No massive combos that you're not going to see coming. So yeah, but great mill outlet. So we got the new school Muldrotha. Lets us cast one card of each permanent type during each of our turns. 6 for a 6/6. Childhood Multani, which I love. Multani was actually my first good EDH ever. So I've got a soft spot for the flavor text, and the card's just insane. I've got it out once and won the game. Pretty easy peasy. Birds of Paradise, we do want our fixing. Vidalcan Ether Mage. So, like I said, we are running a cycling package. The cycling package is entirely built off working with Fluctuator. We're not running new perspectives from the newer set because we don't always have 7 cards in our hand. So this one is Wizard Cycling for 3 colorless. We're never actually going to play the Ether Mage for itself. We're always going to cycle it. It's going to get Trinket Mage or Sylvan Safekeeper, which are great targets. Yeah, Shardless Agent. I couldn't run this in Tymna and Silas. I'm so happy I can run it now. The Cascade's great. We've got Worldly Tutor, Mystical Tutor. We've got a lot of, you're going to see a lot of spice in our Instants and Sorcery package. So there's a lot of great things you can hit there, and a couple second enchantments as well. Duplicant. I wanted to have 1 exile effect that I could recur with Silas Renn. It's expensive, but you can recur your duplicant if it dies, and you know, the amount of times just having that 1 exile option, saving your butt, it's relevant. It's really relevant. First time in a long time I'm running a Bane of Progress, because I can recur my artifacts with Silas Renn, and I only run 3 enchantments. This was the deck that I felt Bane of Progress could really shine in. Yeah, normally I run a Rex Sage. That's kind of been my go-to for the past, but a lot of friends are playing things like Skaram, Azor, and I just don't want to devote that many card slots to dealing with these recurring artifacts. So I just want to blow them all up at once and make a big fatty out of it. Grimgrin is a guy I've been wanting to play for a while. Not the best, a little slow. We don't run boots in the deck. It's not that kind of deck. But Grimgrin is pretty great. I mean, it's an alternative sacrifice outlet for our World Shaper and our Dredge cards like Golgari Thug and Stinkweed Imp. If not, we'll probably have some zombie tokens off Sidisi or some plant tokens or whatever, right? So it's not a big deal, but Grimgrin essentially is going to come in and destroy a creature. Either that or he's going to be hate bait and draw out some removal. So I like the card. Thassa, it's really great for finishing the game. 3 for a 5/5 indestructible at beginning up, keeps Scry 1, and for 2 mana we can make a creature unblockable. So we can get in there with those big fatties late game, or all those 5/3 elemental tokens off Titania, and finish it up. Then we got a Baleful Strix, because Silas Renn's best friend is probably Baleful Strix. Flying Death Touch when it enters draw a card, just really good. Trinket Mage. I'm pretty happy with the Trinket Mage package in this deck. We've got a Mox Amber, we've got a Soul Ring, we've got a Zern Orb, we've got Nihil Spell Bomb, Ether Spell Bomb. I mean, it's just, you know, one of my favorite cards in Magic ever, and I made a package to show it off. Nimble Obstructionist, I just added this Again, the Fluctuator reducing all our cycling costs by 2 colorless. Lets us cycle this for 1, counter an activated or triggered ability, and draw a card, which is pretty great. If not, it's to block, you know, a big fat flyer. That's fine too. It's got flash, so. Alright, so after that, let's get into the Ages of Sorceries. We've got Harrow. What this does is the speed, sacrifice a land as an additional cost, and then look through your library for 2 basic land cards and put them into play. They do not come into play tapped, so this is a really great tempo card to excel and play something afterwards, or hold up mana for a counter or whatever, and you're putting a land into your graveyard, which is great in this deck. And we only run 5 basic lands, so Harrow is one of the only cards that's going to find basic lands in the entire deck. It just took up too many card slots, all the deserts and other shenanigans. So this has basic land cycling as well, and Ancient Excavation is great in the deck. Draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand, then discard that many cards. Well, equal, yeah, you can read it. Anyways, it's got basic land cycling as a backup. So early game, if you're not hitting the colors you want, you can just cycle it, find something, and fill. Otherwise, you're filtering your hand and filling your yard with probably dredge cards and lands and all that good stuff. Frantic Search is the exact same vein. Draw 2, discard 2, untap 3 lands at instant speed. We run 2 of the bounce lands, so we can net mana off of this, which is really nice. I didn't want to run all 3, I wanted a more even color spread in my land base, and it didn't work out running all 3, so I ran 2. Smallpox, never ran Smallpox in an EDH, so pretty cool, pretty excited I get to run this effectively. Each player loses 1, discards a card, sacrifices a creature, then sacrifices a land. All of these modes can potentially benefit us, minus the losing 1. So that's really, it's really neat. I'm really happy about it. Crop Rotation, instant speed, sacrifice a land, and search your library for a land and put it into play. Yeah, that's the strat. Realms Uncharted, same vein. We are going to search for 4 lands. Our opponent's going to pick 2 of them. We're going to put those 2 into our hand and the other 2 into our graveyard. So that's great. We can look for 4 cycling lands. We can look for 4 lands with sacrifice abilities. We can look for, you know, fixing bounces, whatever. Depending on what our board is and what the lands we need are to start doing some cheeky little synergy combos. That's what we can get. Dread Return is our only recursion in the deck. Normally in Sultai you'll see tons of animate dead, reanimate, blah 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 blah. I didn't want to do that. I have done that a million times. I love that. I love that gameplay. I do it a bit in Mathis, so you know, I get my fix there. But here it's about the lands, it's about the cycling and the jank, and that's what I wanted to focus on. So Dread Return is the only one, and that's because we're probably going to mill it right into our yard or discard it, and then being able to sacrifice 3 creatures and pull out a Muldrotha or something and start playing from our yard is pretty awesome. Next up is Intuition, one of the strongest cards in the deck, I would say. 3 to cast instant speed, search for any 3 cards, put 1 into your hand, and the other 2 into your graveyard. Now there is a really cool combo that I just realized last night. It's quite circuitous, but if you have Fluctuator in play and you have Life from the Loam in your graveyard or your hand, you can Intuition, grab 3 cycling lands or 2 cycling lands and Life from the Loam, and then essentially you're guaranteed to play Life from the Loam and draw 2 cards at least for free, because you're using the cycling lands with 2 colorless mana as their cycling cost, and you can do that every turn and just net a ton of draws. Grizzly Salvage, just look at instant speed, Golgari colors, field top 5, put a creature or land into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Great way to fill and get what you need. Life from the Loam, I'm sure you guys know that. Return up to 3 target land cards from your graveyard to your hand. Dredge 3. Crazy, crazy. Picked up a copy out of Japan, which was nice because it was a little cheaper, and I had traded mine away previously, so I didn't really lose that much money. Windfall, just a nice little windfall. Why not? When you're going hard, you're playing your hand out, you're cycling your lands, you're playing all that low CMC stuff. You want to refill in a big game. You want to rely on the fact they have cards in their hand. Splendid Reclamation. Return all land cards from your graveyard to your battlefield tapped. Absolutely nutter of a card, and happy to have it. Mystical Tutor, instant or sorcery. At instant speed, you get to search for it and put it on top of your library. Pretty simple. Constant Mists is a monster in this deck because of all the synergies. We got to fog the board, and it's got a buyback of sacrifice a land. So, we're making 5/3s. If Titania's in play, we're drawing a card. If Gitrog's in play, it's just a good time all around. Countervailing Winds, really happy found a home for this. It's a neat card. I think this is a really cool card in Sultai decks. You counter a spell unless they pay 1 for each card in your graveyard, and if they haven't exiled your graveyard, they're probably paying they have to pay 15 to 30 to not have their spell countered. And early game, you have the option of cycling it as well if you're not filling up your yard as fast as you want. Limduel's Vault, this is the really old one, so I'll read the text to you. Essentially what you do is you look at the top 5 cards of your library at instant speed, and you can put them back in any order. However, if you don't like the top 5 cards, you can pay 1 life, put them on the bottom of your deck, and look at the next top 5 and put them back in any order. And you can repeat this process as much as you like, so pretty nuts. Living Death, why not? Really great when we have our Altar of Dementia in play. We will sacrifice all of our creatures. We will mill ourselves equal to the total power of all of those creatures, and then we will cast Living Death and bring back everything that was on the board and everything that we just milled from graveyard to battlefield. All of our creatures. So that's kind of my favorite combo with Living Death. Pretty cheesy, but I like it. Miscalculation, I like this counterspell. It's not the best, but it's got that perfect cycling cost of 2 colorless, so we're running it. And that's a good early game option. Was having a hard time with that one. This is Deep Analysis. Normally 4 to cast to draw 2 cards, but if it's in your graveyard, you can pay 2 and 3 life and draw 2 cards. So really good card to discard. Worldly Tutor, same as Mystical Tutor, except we're looking for a creature instead of an instant or sorcery at instant speed and putting it on top of our library. Green Sun Zenith, pay X and 1, and we get a look for a green creature, I believe, and and put it into play if its CMC is X or less. So again, those are getting Gitrog, Titania, Ob Nixilis generally. Broken Bond from the new Dominaria set is a really good card that I think is quite slept on. It's sorcery speed, but you're destroying an artifact or enchantment and putting a land from your hand into play. I mean, destroying their Soul Ring, turn 2, and then playing a land? I don't know, that sounds pretty darn good. Unearth is up next. Great card. I mean, you're often going to want to play this instead of cycling it because it's just so strong. For 1 mana at its sorcery speed. Sorry, you get to look for you get to bring back a creature with CMC 3 or less. Otherwise, you can cycle it for 2. And the final instant spell is a Heroic Intervention, which I just picked up, and gives permanents you control hexproof and indestructible. So when someone board wipes and you play this, generally you're feeling pretty darn good. It's also kind of like it's like Green's counterspell. That's how I view it. So quickly we're going to go into the enchantments and then the artifacts. So we've got a Training Grounds. This is here specifically for our Thrasios, paying 2 mana to be able to scry and then reveal and either get a land into play or draw is pretty crazy. Great mana sink. We've got a Burgeoning. Again, this will probably turn into an Explore one day, but right now this deck is going to be more so for multiplayer, so I like the fact that Burgeoning is 1/3 of the price and actually lets you play more lands, but not in the way the deck wants to, so that's kind of the trade-off. And the thing that actually inspired this whole deck is a Squandered Resources. So black and a green, it's an enchantment that lets you sacrifice a land to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. I like collecting old reserve list cards that aren't too expensive. This guy after tax was like 14 bucks. And I just think it's a really cool card to build around, to play with. In this deck, you know, with the World Waker and Splendid Reclamation, we just sack all our lands, net a bunch of mana off of it. We can use that to, you know, play some stuff out or protect our board, and keep up counter magic when we go for the Splendid Reclamation or the World Waker, and try and win off that. So here are the artifacts. Yeah, I'll go quickly through them. We've got a Lotus Petal, really great for turn 2 Silas or turn 1 Thrasios. We've got a Mox Amber. We've got a Soul Ring. We've got a Zurin Orb. I really love Zurin Orb. First time playing with it, and just really cool card. Ether Spell Bomb, one of the most annoying things to have to deal with when Silas Renn is too hard to block. Amulet of Vigor. Bomb in the deck. Whenever a permanent enters the battlefield tapped under my control, untap it. So you're going to see pretty much all my lands are tap lands because of this cheesy strategy. Executioner's Capsule, recurable, destroy a non-black creature, which is pretty nice. Nihil Spellbomb, recurable graveyard exile that can net us a card if we play a black when we sacrifice it. Spellskite, I'm just going to protect all our creatures for a blue or Phyrexian mana. I'm really happy about this one, and it's a monster with Silas because he can bring it back. Fluctuator, there it is. I just love everything about this card. The art, old border, it's debatably my favorite set in Magic. So yeah. And the last one is Altar of Dementia, to allow us a mill outlet. Every time they try and pop something, we just sacrifice it in response and mill ourselves, and try and net some value that way. So, as usual, way longer than I thought, but let's get into the lands. Okay, so we've got a Dunes of the Dead. When it dies, we get a 2/2 zombie. So it's going to die to a lot of things in this deck. That's pretty. That's why I put it in here. God's Eye, same idea. When it dies, we're going to get a 1/1 colorless spirit. It's not going to have flying, but we're still going to get a 1/1 colorless spirit. So these are 2 lands that will net us creatures every time they die, and we can recur them. And that's going to be our token fodder for a lot of our sacrifice abilities. Petrified Field. We can add a colorless, or we can sack it to return a land from graveyard to hand. Really good in the deck. Command Beacon. I don't want to pay more than 4 for Thrasios ever, and I don't want to pay more than 5 for Silas Renn ever. So Command Beacon is in here. I like my cheap generals to be cheap generals. High Market. We needed a sacrifice outlet, so I put in a High Market. Glacial Chasm. This is the monster of the deck. This is really what lets us stall the game. This and Constant Mists to set up our crazy board states. And if we have multiple land drops per turn, we're breaking through the drawback of having to sacrifice a land for both of those spells. So cumulative upkeep, pay 2 life. When it comes into play, sacrifice a land. You cannot attack. All damage dealt to you is reduced to 0. Really, really cool. And the fact that we can reset this, and the fact that we can sacrifice it, get our combat phase in, and then bring it back out after combat. Yeah, I mean, just fun stuff. I'm going to go into the desert package now. Very small desert package. I may add 1 more desert. I like Grasping Dunes. I think I'm loaded up on my colorless producing mana slots, so I'll have to shuffle the mana base around to get a Grasping Dunes in here. But essentially, Grasping Dunes is a desert that it adds a colorless, and you can pay 1 and sack it to put a -1/-1 counter on something. And the fact that I can recur it in the deck, I think, is very strong. But for now, we've got the Ipnu Rivulet, which has the ability of sacking a desert to mill ourselves for 4. So that's the big draw here. And then we've got our 3 deserts. Desert of the Indomitable. Note the cycling cost as well. So with Fluctuator, these are all 1 to cycle. Paying 2 to cycle it isn't bad. We've got Desert of the Mindful and Desert of the Glorified. And we can recur these, right? So it doesn't matter that there's only 3 deserts in here. We actually only need 1, and then we can recur it every turn and sacrifice it to mill ourselves for 4 if we want. These are the 2 to cast cycling lands. We've got the Polluted Mire, the Remote Isle, and the Slippery Karst. These are the best cycling lands once the Fluctuator's in play, and we can recur them with Life from the Loam. Then we've got the dumbed down version, which is the Lonely Sandbar, the Barren Moor, and the Tranquil Thicket. Now I may actually take out the Barren Moor for another land, just a stronger utility land. We'll see how that goes. Then we've got our basics. We've got 2 forests, 1 island. Oh, well, there's a swamp in here somewhere. We'll find it. We've got a Halimar Depths. Lets us look at the top 3 and put them back in any order. Recording this, pretty fun. Juka Bog, constantly exiling graveyards, pretty good. There's our swamp, Lonely Swamp. Shizo. This is actually one of the only ways that our Silas Renn is going to be unblockable. It's either this or it's Thassa. So if they are playing black, then we have to rely on the Thassa, which means we'll have to get it through a Worldly Tutor, or recurring it from the graveyard, or drawing it. A lot easier to get the Shizo. We've got an Ash Barrens for some land cycling, and I used Ash Barrens here instead of Evolving Wilds. Evolving Wilds would give me the double landfall trigger on the turn, but the Ash Barrens, once we're out of basics, I can just play it as a regular land, so it made more sense. We've got our temples, Temple of Deceit with the Scry. Fetid Pools I just picked up. This is a dual land with cycling too, so I mean, it's the dream land for the deck. I wish there was one for each of the other color combinations, but hey. Hissing Quagmire, for 3 mana it can turn into a 2/3 Death Touch, and with Life from the Loam we can trade with this and then bring it back, and then trade with it and bring it back, and probably win that battle long term. Yavimaya Coast, again, this is going to be a Path of Ancestry. I just didn't want to take it out of Mathis, so I'm going to pick up another copy, and it's going to be that one. And what Path of Ancestry does, for you guys who don't know, is it's going to come into play tapped, and whenever you can tap it to add any color of your commanders, and if you play a creature that has a shared creature type, you also get a Scry 1. So that's pretty cool. With 2 commanders, that means I can play Merfolk, Wizard, or Humans, and Scry 1. We've got our Bounce Land, the Simic Growth Chamber, and the Golgari Rot Farm. I wanted both of them to have green in them because that is the major color of the deck, so I ran those 2. Then we've got our Temple of Mystery, Temple of Malady, because I want those Scry lands, Command Tower, and an Opulent Palace. And finally, funny reserve list cards again, guys. Undiscovered Paradise. So what this does is we can tap it to add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool, and then at the beginning of our upkeep return it to our hand. With Hedron Crab, I can forever get those triggers. Any of the landfall guys, you get your triggers, but you're not pushing yourself ahead on your total land count unless you have those. You know, this is why I'm gonna get an Azusa like this week, because I really want to push through. I have the Gitrog monster with the Azusa, it'll be great, and then once the Burgeoning turns into an Explorer, this card will actually just be so much stronger in the deck, and quite abusable. I think it'll be quite strong. So anyways, that's the deck. Another really long, complicated deck by Kieran Airley of Airley Gaming. I hope you guys enjoyed. I will post up a deck list for this. Yeah, thank you for checking out the channel. I had a few followers even though I wasn't posting anything, so I really appreciate all that stuff. You guys are the best, and I'm just happy I get to share this. All the best, take care, and peace out.